I'm really honored and excited to introduce you to Pauline Jacqueline Njoroge. She is our program coordinator from Nairobi, Kenya. So it's evening for her tonight, and she's sharing some of her time with us. She's going to be co-leading this presentation with me. And Pauline has been a part of Lift Up the Vulnerable since 2022 and has played a pivotal role in helping achieve some of our impacts last year and into this new year. So I'm excited for her to share more about, have you hear from her and share more about our agriculture programs. Pauline also assists with some of our female empowerment opportunities. So thank you, Pauline, for being here. I want to dive in to review and celebrate some of the impacts that your generosity has helped us achieve. As you know, at its core, human trafficking is the exploitation of a person's vulnerabilities. And so Lift Up the Vulnerable exists to prevent the trafficking and oppression of vulnerable children and women and empower them to be change makers in their communities. So with your support and the strength of our locally led anti-trafficking network, we address the root causes of exploitation in the remote communities that we're working. And we're specifically going where children and women are the most vulnerable to exploitation. And there aren't many organizations working there because it's either too dangerous or too remote or too expensive to deliver the critical services that are required. So we do our work by providing protection, education, and economic development. And the effectiveness of our work in these really hard to reach places and often lawless lands is shaped through our focus on building partnerships with Indigenous partners, local leaders, and their staff to help us creatively address the issues affecting those who are vulnerable in really culturally appropriate ways. So that means we support and equip local leaders who utilize their experience, their expertise, and resources to care for the vulnerable in their local communities. And all community development and services that are offered are intimately linked. And Pauline will share more about this when she shares about our agriculture especially, but they're intimately linked in to the Indigenous directors that we work with and their innovative visions for what is appropriate in their communities and tribes. As you may know, conflict erupted in Sudan in April of 2023. And actually, I'm not sure if the slide will go forward to the map. Thank you. And so in what many are calling the forgotten war, Sudan's tragedy really remains very, very overlooked, painfully overlooked. And now, over 1 year later, 10 million Sudanese have been forced to flee their homes or have left Sudan altogether. Nearly 20 million children can no longer attend school. And this leads to an increase in exploitation as children as child soldiers and other forms of labor trafficking. And there are mounting reports of genocide. So our partners at all locations in Sudan and South Sudan are really feeling the effects of the war starting last year and still continuing as it grows this year. And even if they're not in the direct line of fire, thankfully, all of our centers have not seen combat near them, but they have experienced the effects of war. There has been, for example, increased internally displaced or IDPs and refugees in the regions where we're working. And at last count, the topmost heart is Our Father's Cleft in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. And in January, a report came out that 476,000 people were resettling in that region, which was already very hard pressed and didn't have enough resources for its citizens. So having almost 500,000 people come to their village and area, it is really amplifying the needs in the communities where we're working. This means that most of those people don't have housing. There's limited food resources or medical care. And this already fragile community, the demands for services are being exacerbated and creating huge inflation rates, and spikes and limited access to resources. So the needs in where we're working has really increased over the past year, starting in April 2023 and growing. And at a time when violence defines the futures of many people in Sudan and South Sudan, our commitment, however, is to transform lives during conflict, and that remains steadfast. We've been doing this work for almost 20 years now, and the shifts in Sudan and South Sudan have happened in both steps forward and steps back, but we persist because we know that generational change is the solution for long-term transformation in these countries. And ultimately, we believe and hope you will witness today during our time together that redemption and transformation are more than possible. And even in the face of unsurmountable odds, God is at work and good things are taking place in these countries. And in 2023, you helped us achieve really tremendous strides in our work to disrupt the pipeline to human trafficking, bind up the brokenhearted, and restore hope. So that includes rescuing 148 new children and bringing them into our programs at all 3 centers. Some of the boys and girls in these photos here are the newest recruits that were recruited last year, specifically at New Life Ministry. And with these new recruits, we provided safe housing for a total of 565 children, and Ashton, if you'll advance the slide, who had no other options for housing, and then educated a total of 1,374 in our 3 pre-K through 12th grade education programs. Now, a really critical component of our model is focused on education. It's our largest trafficking prevention program. And in South Sudan, in a normal year, and I say normal year because war has disrupted what the reality in these numbers in Sudan, but in a normal year in South Sudan, over 70% of school-aged children are not receiving an education. And only 27% of the adult population can read and write. So education is a critical barrier and opportunity for us to provide real transformation in these communities. Our education program accounts for about 36% of our program expenses. And through it, students are equipped to grow intellectually and spiritually in our schools. And this includes the kids in our protection programs and students from the community who have somewhere to live, but they come to us for the school program. They receive 2 meals a day, access to preventative medical care, emergency medical services, clothing, and critical needs that they can't necessarily get at home, but they have family to live with. We also provide education for about 15 alumni in 2023 who were offered continuing opportunities for scholarships at higher education institutions and vocational training programs. And our impact report shares 4 stories of children, and it's linked in the chat above, so you can find that impact report if you haven't read it yet. But I'd like to highlight one of them. And so, Ashton, if you'll move to the next slide. I'll call this beautiful young girl Bakita. And she was 12 years old when she was brought to our anti-trafficking network last year. And prior to, she had started developing eye infections in 2021, which ultimately caused her limited vision. Now, what's unfortunately a common occurrence, not exclusively common, but it can happen, and we have lots of reports of kids in our program that fit this, but out of fear and ignorance, her entire family chased her out of their home because they feared she was cursed and that she would curse them. So at around 9 years old, this young girl had to fend for herself. She was struggling to survive in the streets in a nearby town for almost a whole year, all by herself at 9 years old. And wonderfully, a kind government official was visiting that town, and he was determined to help keep Bakita safe and help her. He brought her to the capital of Juba for treatment, and he kept her with his family at his home. However, when her eyesight didn't improve, he lift up the vulnerables local leaders to help. So in 2023, she was medically evacuated to Kenya for support, and she fully recovered. That's the barrier that many of the people in Sudan and South Sudan face, is that oftentimes they have very simple and treatable, maybe not simple, but treatable medical conditions, but they just don't have any access to medical care. So that creates large barriers for them, because at 9 years old, she had to navigate how to survive on her own in a very unforgiving community. Last year, we provided medical evacuations for 7 students to Kenya, followed by recovery at our in-country safe house. And in 2024, we already have 2 children who are in Kenya for care. So it's just continues to be an ongoing need that we're always addressing these medical either emergencies or where kids don't have the access to the care that they need. And it might have been a simple evaluation, but there's just no quality or level of support there. Dr. Joan Perry's on our call today, and I'm thankful that she's here. She served on a medical missions trip with us last year and helped provide support. And that's often what we need, is to bring people into our centers to help support the outer community, because they just don't have access. A prayer request for one of the kids that's with us now is for a young boy we'll call Dang. And he was at that clinic last year. He was diagnosed with they thought, they didn't have the testing equipment, was rheumatic heart disease. They brought him to Kenya, and it was verified that he does have that. So he's going to have a heart operation in a few weeks. So you can be praying for Dang. But things like this are the barriers that children in these communities face. So ensuring safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments for all the children in our care and in our communities is critical to our work at Love, and really an integral part of how we prevent human trafficking. Bakita would have been very vulnerable had not a safe human adult come into her life and helped her find a path towards restoration. So in 2023, we had 12 nursing students participate in the medical clinic with Dr. Joan Perry that I just mentioned. They served their community, working side by side with visiting doctors from the USA, and collectively treated 1,139 people in 5 days. These people, again, would not have had access to medical care at the local level without the help and support of these visiting doctors and nurses. And although medical care is not really our primary focus, it is a vital component to our protection programs. And these free clinics become a real life-saving blessing to the local community who don't have access throughout the year. They also grow goodwill and support for the anti-trafficking work being done by our partner locations and the local leaders. Last year, 2 of these nursing students graduated, they're the last picture in this slide, with degrees, and are now serving their communities full-time. So from point of entering into our protection services, our goal is to launch empowered leaders back into their communities to help build and grow transformation opportunities more and more in larger and larger impacts. Over the past 5 years, you've helped us uplift thousands of children. And we're so thankful. In 2023, we maintained a 92% average retention rate across our locations in our school program, with an average dropout rate of around age 17, almost 18. And in high-risk areas where there's a lot of trauma and a lot of lack of access to education, this is really an incredible accomplishment from our local leaders and teachers for providing academic excellence and a safe place for vulnerable children to thrive. Due to the trauma the kids in our programs have experienced and the instability in the area, our dropout rate is low considering all of the barriers that the children face. So another reason for students dropping out as they are teenagers is because we don't age out our students. Students join our programs at different times. So some enter grade 1 at the age of 10 or 11 or 12. Bakita, for example, would be in grade 1 or 2 and she's 13. That means our education program is designed for students to stay until they graduate high school. And many alumni will stay on for 1 year after that during a gap year program and participate in an internship, a paid internship that we have available at all of our centers. We prioritize economic development through our locally led initiatives because we know that local leaders are the key to success of our programs. And so last year, if you'll go to the next slide, Ashton, we were able to equip 105 male and 66 female full-time staff for our partner locations. We invested in 13 male and 6 female interns, alumni of our school programs, and created short-term or seasonal jobs for 341 people, community members who helped construct latrines, tailor uniforms, rethatch a church at New Life Ministry, erect fencing, or worked at our school farms. So, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. But almost 40% of the leaders that serving as full-time staff in our network are women who lead as teachers and administrators and child welfare coordinators and cooks and cleaners and caretakers. So really we're building momentum for women to be empowered in these communities where traditionally they're very much overlooked. In 2023, we made tremendous strides in helping our partners achieve food security, which is one of our top priorities. And currently we have to import food to each of our centers, which is really dangerous and also really expensive. Over the past 3 years, we built a thriving partnership with Rise Against Hunger, and there's some staff from Rise Against Hunger on this call today, so thanks for being with us, to help deepen the technical knowledge of our farm team at 2 of our centers, Hope for South Sudan and a little bit at Our Father's Cleft. And Rise Against Hunger has helped invest heavily in the success of our largest farm at Hope for South Sudan. And in 2022, when the partnership began, we were able to grow the farm production from 20 acres to last year, 127 acres. So in 3 years, over 100 acres of new land were harvested on. And in 2023, for the very first time at this center, Hope for South Sudan, 75% of all consumed food was generated on their farm, which is really incredible. So it's our largest locally led farming initiative. And I've invited Pauline, who is, as I named, Love's program coordinator. She's based in Kenya, to share more about the importance of food security and Love's agriculture initiatives. Pauline is a key facilitator in supporting our farm programs at all locations, but especially at Hope for South Sudan and Our Father's Cleft. And so Pauline, thanks for being here. And can you first share with us about the food insecurity that the people of Sudan and South Sudan are facing and why this leads to greater rates of exploitation and trafficking?
Oh, thank you so much, Audrey, and thank you everyone who's on this call. We're grateful that you made time to be here with us. So when we're looking at food insecurity, we can look at it first at a global scale. And, according to the United Nations, about 2.4 billion people experience moderate or severe food insecurity globally, and 3.1 billion cannot afford a healthy diet. And so many children under 5 suffer from malnutrition. So when we come down to, our neck of the woods where we operate in Sudan and South Sudan, it is also an ongoing pandemic where, according to the World Food Program, about 18 million people are facing acute food insecurity in Sudan, which is about 37% of the population. And 7.1 million people are also facing severe food insecurity in South Sudan, and 6.5 million children are facing malnutrition. So when we're looking at these numbers, there's a 37% population in Sudan and more than half of the population in South Sudan. It just leads them to higher risk of exploitation and trafficking, because these people are preyed upon with the promise of more access to food. So traffickers go to these very vulnerable people and offer quote unquote solutions of trying to help them earn an income and become food secure. So these vulnerable people are then either smuggled or trafficked across borders, and therefore have no legal recourse in the places that they're trafficked to, because one, they are unfamiliar with the legal systems of these countries, and two, they are afraid of, coming forward because one, they are afraid of being sent back to the very problem they were running away from, or two, also facing legal recourse by being illegal immigrants in these countries. Next slide, please. So in last key agenda of empowering communities, we operate in Sudan and South Sudan to one, end hunger and human trafficking, where in Sudan, one, we have a full-time 3 agriculture staff and about 30 consistent casual laborers in the 2023 production period, where we cultivated over 50 acres of land. And then when we move to South Sudan, we have the Empowering Leaders Through Nutrition Smart Agriculture in collaboration with Rise Against Hunger, where we support 23 full-time agriculture nutrition staff and 30 farmer field school participants who are engaged in sustainable agriculture practices over 120 acres. So the staff and farmer field school participants in South Sudan are trained on sustainable agriculture practices and are encouraged to apply the same in their farms. So when the Farmer Field School Participants program, we started it in 2024, and 90% of these participants are women who get support through the community extension officer who trains them 4 days a week, the Hope for South Sudan farm, and then supports them 1 day a week at their own homes. So this initiative ensures that, one, the children at the safe centers have enough nutritious meals. Two, the community gets knowledge through the community empowerment programs and work toward ending hunger and making them less susceptible to exploitation and trafficking. And three, the community also gets empowered through income generation, where they can earn their own income through selling surplus, and also the income and informal education through the training programs. Next slide, please. So as you can see in that slide, these are community farmer field school participants who are receiving an informal education and training to help empower them in agriculture and nutrition. Next slide, please. So one of our major programs in South Sudan is empowering leaders through nutrition smart agriculture, which is dubbed ELNA, which is a collaborative program between Lift Up the Vulnerable and Rise Against Hunger. So the program aims at enabling Hope for South Sudan to fulfill most of its nutritional needs through own production by teaching conservation agriculture techniques and implementing nutrition smart agriculture programming. So through the implementation of this program, we aim to ensure that the Safe House and school are achieving food security. We improve the nutrition of the staff and children, and also ensure economic independence. So again, through this program, Hope for South Sudan has been and continues to receive training to build capacity in conservation agriculture techniques, which improves the applied agriculture practices, which now translate to increased crop yields and diversification, thus ensuring that there's food and nutrition security, and also ensuring that we build capacity for the nutritional well-being for the children and staff. One of the ways we do this is to incorporate a behavior change communication, which ensures lasting and impactful outcomes. So why we chose these locations is, one, the area has so much agricultural potential. And two, the family dynamics of the area are very integral in ensuring that these programs continue. In these areas, we find that most men are soldiers and thus are away from home for months at a time. And even when they are home and work as the soldiers, they go for months without pay. And thus they leave the women at home with the children whom they have to feed and educate. So having 90% of our farmer field school participants as women, as you can see on your right-hand side, that really helps ensure that there is community empowerment and the children and women in these areas are safe from exploitation and trafficking. So since the beginning of this project, we have had tremendous improvement in children's health. So when this project, at the onset of this project, we had 25 malnourished children, and currently we have none. The second thing is we have increased agricultural diversity. So before we started the ELNA program, Hope for South Sudan was only producing maize, some fruit and vegetables on approximately 20 acres of land. But since the inception of ELNA, Hope for South Sudan is growing over 30 crops comprising of leafy greens, we have vegetables, we have tubers, we have cereals, we have fruit, we're keeping cattle for milk, and we also have a beekeeping project. Number three, we have increased food availability. So again, before the inception of ELNA, the highest record was 4 tons of maize. But since the inception of ELNA, the team has achieved a cumulative production of 122.7 tons of leafy greens, vegetables, tubers, cereals. We have produced over 2,000 liters of milk and 380 liters of honey and 45 fish. We have also generated some income where before ELNA, we had no income generating activities. But in 2023, the team sold 380 liters of honey, making $950. There are also agriculture, kitchen, protection, and farmer field school participants who are earning directly from the project. Next slide, please. So when we're talking of the farm, there is a lot that goes on with the farm. as I mentioned, we have 23 permanent staff on the farm, where we have a farm manager, his deputy, their assistants. We have a tractor driver. We have 3 staff who deal with the livestock, 2 as herders, and 1 as an oxen trainer. We also have farm hands and kitchen staff. So previously, we had been using casual labor for the farm operations, especially during the weeding period. But this year, we have taken a different approach, and we have the Farmer Field School participants, who are 30 of them, again, 90% of them women. So there is an entire array of activities that go on during the production season. So we start with the planning, as with any project, where we have the Rise Against Hunger technical team, the Love Programs team, and the Hope for South Sudan implementing team. So we start with the planning, with the farm tools and budgets before the hard work begins. So the hard work involves first getting seeds and tools shipped from Kenya to South Sudan, because of the disruption with the war, we are not able to source these items in the country, so we have to ship them in from Kenya. So then we go into the plowing and the harrowing. So this has been done by tractors, and because of our oxen trainer, we now have oxen also doing some plowing this year. So while previously we were doing all our plowing and harrowing using the tractor, this year we're only doing 80 acres of plowing and harrowing using tractors and 34.7 acres using the oxen. This is in an effort to improve and retain the soil health. So the plowing and harrowing process takes about 2 months. The implementing team then plants seed using pit and line planting and other conservation methods to maximize land utility. And again, the hard work is they weed every 3 weeks, because this is a tropical area, because there's some heat and there's rain. So the weeds really sprout out very fast. So it's done in a 3-week period, 3-week intervals. And then for the main crops, we harvest toward the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we have an array of harvesting practices where the harvest is taken from the field. It is dried and sorted and weighed and handed over to the store for storage for the children and staff, and also for sales. So from the kitchen staff and other nutritional staff, they get this food from the main store, which then they cook on a modern stoves for the children and staff at the institution. Again, while the main crops are growing in the field, there are other activities going on every single day. For instance, there's the vegetables and leafy green planting. This is done continuously throughout the year. And the excess is often dried using solar dryers and consumed during the dry months. So the solar dryers are a clean energy technology that harnesses solar energy to dry vegetables, greens, fruit, for preservation by reducing the moisture content and increasing their shelf life. This is often very critical for us during the dry periods where we cannot grow these vegetables. Now, number 2, we have orchard maintenance. Again, it happens throughout the year. We have fruit harvesting and consumption. And our orchard has mangoes and oranges and lemons, guava, bananas, and plantain, and some sugarcane as well. Then we have the livestock rearing. Again, it's an annual process where the livestock team takes care of these animals daily throughout the year. So we have 22 cattle, 49 goats, and 6 sheep, and 7 of the lactate, and we have 7 of these cattle are lactating and are milked in the morning and the evening, and this milk is fed to the children. The other project that goes on throughout the year is the beekeeping project. So the team consistently monitors and maintains the beehives. So we can go to the next slide. So as you can see on your left, those are vegetables. And again, these happen throughout the year and are intercropped with bananas just to make sure that the bananas are getting, irrigated as the vegetables are being grown during the dry periods, just to make sure that there is consistent vegetables and fruit for the children. And we can see a young child there on our bottom right being fed some nutritious beans. On our next slide, I think it's 2 slides down where we have an array of fruits and vegetables. We'll come back to this in a minute. Just one more, Ashton. Yes, perfect. That one. So when all this is from our farm, where we have a diverse range of crops in the farm. So we have bananas there as fruits. We have the okra. We have the tomatoes. We have some gentlemen over there cleaning cereals, and we have tomatoes, eggplant, and African eggplant, which are a bit different from the eggplant. And the kids love the diversity the farm offers to their diet. They enjoy the fruit and constant nutritional food from the farm. They enjoy having cassava and beans. When the cassava is ready, they enjoy fresh maize on the cob and other various fruits offered to them. They also enjoy lemonade from the fresh lemons made from the orchard. So in 2023, we had some of the most productive seasons yet, where our most productive and delicious treat was 27,970 kilograms of mangoes. That is almost 14,000 mangoes from the orchard, which is the biggest orchard in the region. At the same time, we had 17,573 kilograms of cassava, which is a tuber like a yam or sweet potato. We also had 11,343 kilograms of sorghum, which is a cereal that is used in most meals as a base, like rice or maize. We had 7,862 kilograms of maize, 3,584 kilograms of pigeon peas, 3,450 kilograms of oranges, 2,261 kilograms of bananas, and 350 liters of honey. So for the first time ever, as Audrey mentioned, South Sudan produced 75% of its food consumption needs, and we're on track to reaching 100% in the next 2 years. So this program is really impactful to the children and the community. If we could go back to 2 slides over, Ashton. So we have served 315,854 meals in 2023. 282,000 of these meals were fed to the children. So the nutritious meals have had a great impact on these children. And I would like us to look at the young lady on the left. in red trousers. That is Mary. So while Mary came to the institution over a decade ago, she would she was one of those severely malnourished children, and she stayed longest on our malnutrition chart. So through the nutritional program, now Mary is healthy and thriving. And well, in 2023, while Love started a youth running club in all institutions, a club that offers running activities, sports therapy, and mentorship, um, Mary joined it at Hope for South Sudan. In August, when Love hosted an inaugural Hope for South Sudan marathon, Mary placed fifth in the marathon, having run 5 kilometers on a Maram road in under 30 minutes with no shoes. So she caught the eye of the national athletics teams, who invited her to take part in the national athletics competition in Juba later in the year. And she placed third in the 5 kilometers race. And we have the bronze medal that hangs in over South Sudan as a trophy for our achievement. So coming all the way to one of the malnourished children to one of our biggest athletic stars, that is a really big fit. So in our next slide, we can see, I will highlight Mary, another Mary, who was a community beneficiary with our project. One, she was working as a casual laborer, and two, she received seeds as a beneficiary, as we often do give compensation in monetary terms, and we have seeds for them to grow at their own farms. So while Mary was part of the over 100 casual workers in the farm during that production period, Mary also happened to produce over 500 kilograms of sorghum from the seed she got from the institution, some of which she sold and supported her family. Her oldest daughter was in school, and she paid school fees with some of that money from the proceeds of the sale of the surplus. So while our farms are different, they're also quite similar. The one in Sudan and South Sudan. So 90% of the casual labor in 2023 was provided by women. And, similarly, we only have 6 months to farm annually in the two locations due to the extreme weather conditions. So, and when I'm talking of extreme weather conditions, it's when it's hot, it's really hot. And one of the reasons extreme heat occurrences led to a nationwide school shutdown for 2 weeks in March of 2024. And when it rains, it really pours because we have sometimes flash floods in the areas. So due to these activities, we have some challenges that we are trying to mitigate in our operations. So some of the biggest challenges is one, lack of provisions, and two, lack of knowledge. How we're trying to mitigate these two is by training, the community through our farmer field school to ensure that the community receives agriculture and nutrition training, which they will apply in their homes and hopefully pass on to the community. So we have a current cohort that will study for 9 months, and hopefully in the future, using this curriculum-based training, we can also bring in some of our graduates from our schools to participate, because not all of them make it to colleges. So it has really been a feat to have the privilege of witnessing this firsthand. Since I joined Lift Up the Vulnerable, I have seen a great impact on the children's mental, spiritual, cerebral, and physical growth at all the centers, because here they receive education, they receive nutritious meals, they receive safe housing, mentorship, and also spiritual guidance and counseling from the staff and pastors. So it has been phenomenal to witness these changes that, the old and new recruits go through, from young, afraid children to well-rounded children who thrive in the centers. And, having seen these afraid children thrive and start dreaming about futures, wanting to be teachers and doctors and farmers, and having an impact on their communities, I cannot express enough how wonderful it has been. I have also seen the dedication of my fellow colleagues, in Kenya, in the US, and most especially the ones on the ground in Sudan and South Sudan, to ensure that these children do not lack anything to empower them and help them thrive. What inspires me mostly about the work that we do is it's actually very tangible. And Audrey mentioned this at the beginning of her presentation, where in our impact report, we have 565 children who are safely housed and 1,374 have been educated. So beyond the lens of the children, we cannot forget the staff. We have the staff in education, administration, kitchen, agriculture, housing, and protection, who are also economically empowered through the gainful employment provided by these centers. So with over 80% of our staff being Sudanese and South Sudanese, they are able to provide for the immediate and extended families, again, reducing the risk of exploitation and trafficking. And without the income from their jobs, their communities would have been left more vulnerable than they are. And, when it comes to food insecurity and other forms of harm. So, and all this has been achieved through your generosity. So we're really grateful for that. And thank you, Audrey, that you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Pauline. That was really helpful and really informative. I loved all the beautiful photos of the kids and the food. It was a delicious lunchtime presentation. So thanks for that. And we know that we appreciate your time and know that some of you might have to go back to work or a meeting. So thanks for spending this past 45 minutes with us. For anyone that can stay on, if you have questions, please start entering them into the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. And we'll finish up in the next 10 minutes. But wanted to just give a few, as we wait for you to ask some questions, we'll give some updates about what's coming on the horizon. So this year, looking ahead, we're looking to expand our farming at all locations. And Pauline is a real integral part of that process, and Rise Against Hunger, our partners. So we will, we're creating a strategic plan for New Life Ministry, which is our newest farm. It's the only center we're not actively doing farming at, but last year we were able to secure about 23 acres of farm land. So this year is when we start preparing that land for and preparing a strategy for how to do farming development in that region. And we're also looking to expand infrastructure and development at each of our schools. If the security levels in Sudan remain amicable, we will continue to deepen our school development through growing, building our, I think it's about 8 classrooms at Our Father's Cleft. We have some wells to drill and latrines and other renovations for existing buildings that we want to accomplish this year and over the next 2 years. We also want to deepen our holistic and community-centered empowerment programs. We have a pastor's training and medical missions team, and Dr. Joan Perry is heading back. So if you think it's a good trip, we have repeat offenders, and we appreciate Joan for being a part of that. The goal of the pastors and the medical missions team is really to equip local leaders. So they're going for a short time to build up the community members in those regions, and provide skill sets or training opportunities that just aren't available. So this is a real good way of growing a movement towards empowerment and transformation. And we hope to recruit approximately or over 120 new children in our programs this year. We have space to accommodate that many. And one of the ways that you can help us make and achieve these goals and continue celebrating what we've been able to do is help get the word out about Lift Up the Vulnerable's work. One way to do that is through a program called Love Strong. And I'm going to share a link, 2 links in the chat right now that you can go and follow. Love Strong is a real great and simple way to strengthen the children in our programs in Sudan and South Sudan by taking a journey, a personal fitness journey of your own to strengthen yourself. So it's a simple way to get involved, raise awareness, raise resources by inviting your friends and family to participate. There's a link there, and Sasha Nicole, who's our advancement officer, is on this call now, and she'll be happy to share more with you if you'd like to learn. Another way is by joining the Love Collective, which is our global monthly giving program. And by joining the monthly giving program, you help us equip the local leaders to address the root causes of exploitation. So you're helping provide that monthly support that is really required to advance the needs of the organization and the kids that we're equipping and empowering. So it's a really great way to participate. And of course, praying and helping raise awareness in your communities in other ways. And if you're interested in doing any of that, we're happy to accommodate and give you ideas. And you can add a name, send us an email at info@liftupthevulnerable.org, or enter in chat if you'd like to learn more, and someone will follow up with you. And I'll end, since there's no questions right now, I'll end with a prayer. And this is a prayer that I find very meaningful. So please join with me in both living it and in the praying of it. Oh God, we didn't see them, but you did. The hundreds and thousands of human beings trafficked each year to join the millions who are trapped in modern-day slavery. Under terrible conditions, they work in factories, plow fields, harvest crops, work quarries, fill brothels, clean homes, and haul water. Many are the children with tiny fingers for weaving rugs and small shoulders for bearing rifles. Their labor is forced, their bodies are beaten, their faces hidden from those who don't really want to see them. But you see them all, God of the poor. You hear their cry and you answer by opening our eyes and breaking our hearts and loosening our tongues to insist no more. Amen. Thank you for being a part of this. And thank you for the impacts you are making.
We actually have a question, Audrey, right there from Trisha.
Oh, okay, great. Trisha, I'll answer that. But if you have to go, thank you for being a part of this. And thanks for sharing your lunch hour with us. Would you say that the majority of Sudan's people have access to the gospel or know the gospel? Pauline, do you have any data on that? Do you know?
Well, I don't have specific data, but I know in Sudan, there's a vast majority of them are Islam, but we also have, for instance, in the Nuba Mountains, there's a very high population that is Christian-based, and most of South Sudan is Christian-based.
However, Christian persecution in Sudan is a reality in Sudan. And most of the country is traditionally operating under Sharia law. And so that's one of the things that we had hoped would be different when the new government took place, that there would be freedom of religion in the country, but then it dissolved once the chaos erupted. So there were steps forward and then now a lot of steps backward. Very good. Well, thank you all. Thanks for being a part of this, and we'll be in touch in the future. Take care.